So, you know, finding new animals doesn't only help the animals, it helps the environment and the habitat that they live. It gives a reason for protecting it.
Now you're a cryozoologist. Crypto. So
Yeah.
cryo would mean you're frozen, wouldn't it?
Exactly.
Cryptozoologist. Does that mean you cover everything? Because we've got some pictures of fish as well, which are also in your book, which is called the Lost Ark. Let's have a look. This is a catfish from Brazil, I believe, which is the strange looking thing. It's more like a worm, isn't it?
Well, this is it. When it was first, I mean, there are lots of these things. Some of them go back to the 1930s.
What's that one of those things you buy in sweet shops,
yeah,
isn't it?
some of these weird ones, but this one was quite a recent one, 1984, this particular species, and it was found actually living on land, of all things. I mean, you don't expect to find fish on land, but this one was living quite happily on the bank above the river in Brazil, and when some were captured to be studied, when they were placed into water, they hop back out again. They don't like water, basically. This is the real fish out of water. And again, very unusual, very, very specialised. Its nearest relatives are parasitic. And this took the stage one stage further. Instead of living in other animals, this actually lives in soil litter on the land and absorbs oxygen. That's why it's so bright red. It absorbs oxygen through the skin, and the skin is very, very highly supplied with blood.
So what sort of scale are we talking about there?
Very small, worm-like, only a few inches long. It hasn't actually even got a formal scientific name yet. It is so new. People are still deciding what to call it, you know, a long Latin name.
How come it's not a worm rather than a fish?
It's just a very, very special... It's a fish that has basically taken the place of a worm in evolutionary terms. It's evolved to
So how can we still call it a fish then? I mean, what's it got? What's it got?
Inside, basically, it's a fish. It has the gills, it has the normal vertebrae and so forth. But external, it's a case of, you know, appearances can deceive. Externally, it's evolved to live like a worm, so it's become external.
You can understand it, can't you, Carl? When you see something that size, how people just don't see them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, some of them...
Unless you specifically go out to look for
Well, again, that was accident. I mean, people didn't know they existed. That was an accidental find. It was probably, you know, more important than what they actually did go to look for. But a lot of these things have turned up by accident.
What did they actually go to
Well,
look
they were
for?
just studying the whole ecology of the area, the river, the soil litter fauna, and then, you know, while they were doing that, this little creature was discovered.
They were actually looking for a brontosaurus and happened to tread on one of those instead. We've got the Titan longhorn.
Yep.
We're down to the insect world now. We've got a picture of that as well.
Yep,
What's special about this? This looks like sort of things that crawl across my garage on a regular basis.
Well, judging from the dimension, though, would they be as big as that?
No, maybe not.
No.
Maybe not.
The world's largest beetle, in actual fact. I mean, it is many inches long, up to a foot long or so. Found again in the Brazilian region. A lot of these creatures were, but the way...
Was it up to a foot long?
Yes.
A beetle a foot long.
If you're in the antennae...
For arachnophobics everywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, the way that was found was really odd. They knew about it from a painting.
It was running across an envelope at the time.
Going back to the 1770s, and then nothing more was really heard of it. A few turned up, but no one knew where they came from. And then one day there was an orchid collector of all things in Brazil, and with some native fishermen, and they caught a fish and gutted it and took something from out of the fish and were going to throw it back into the river. And the orchid collector said, you know, what have you got? And it was one of these. And for about 20 or 30 years, that was the only way you could get these beetles. Use to catch fish, gut them, and pull beetles out of them. Because apparently what happened, they fly over the Amazon River in areas like that, but the wings aren't particularly powerful, and gusts of wind blow them and right into the river, and the fish come up, gulp, and that's the end of another Titan. But then in 1957 they found them a much easier way. Look around the lampposts in certain Brazilian villages, and what do you find crawling underneath them? Were Titan beetles, attracted by the light like moths. Yes. And that's how they found you know, a good supply of them for the rest of time.
And so they're quite healthy. And
oh yeah,
there's lots of them around.
Quite a fair few now, yes.
I find this fascinating. All sorts of different species. You never knew these species existed. We've got another couple of pictures as well. Kitty's hog-nosed bat.
Yep.
Let's have a look at Kitty's hog-nosed bat.
Found in 1973. It's also called a bumblebee bat because that is the size, as you can tell from the fingernails, the body is about the size of a bumblebee. It weighs, to give the exact weight, 0.07 ounces. So you're talking about less than 1/10 of 1 ounce.
The world's smallest mammal.
In fact, probably the world's smallest backbone creature. That is about as small as a warm-blooded animal could get. For physiological reasons. It would freeze to death, frankly, if it got any smaller. It would lose heat so rapidly. It would freeze to death.
Where's that found now?
That was found in Thailand, in a few caves in Thailand. And again, the usual thing happened. As soon as they became well known, the natives thought of a good way of capitalising upon it. And in all the souvenir shops, little paperweights with Kitty's hog-nosed bats embedded in them. And so in a few years' time, it became literally one of the world's rarest creatures. But fortunately, Thailand scientists went out to look and found in some unexplored caves about 2,000 of them. Those are now, of course, highly protected, and Kitty's hognose bat isn't so rare anymore.
What about Goldie's monkey?
Again, another very strange little creature. Until that turned up, there were two groups of South American monkeys, what are known as the true monkeys, things like howlers and capuchins, and then the marmosets. And then this came along, and it combines the features of both. It has the nails, the hands, general skeleton of a marmoset, but it has other things, the dentition and the skull of the true monkey. And now, of course, the problem is that turned up in 1904, but even today, no one's quite sure how to classify it.
Right.
And most people take the easy way out and they give it a family of its own.
Just before we go, let's come back to something a little closer to home. We've talked a little earlier about Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, and we talked about things like that. Well, what about the other beastie you brought with you, which is called, it has been known as what? We'll pop it there, shall we?
You name it.
The Beast of Exmoor, the Beast of Bodmin, and all the rest of it. I mean, tell us the story behind this one.
Well, this one really is a new animal. It isn't new in terms of the species. It's new in where it's being found. Lots of people, it sounds strange, but lots of people do keep exotic cats as pets, things like panthers, pumas, all sorts of things. And after 1976, when a new law came in, the Dangerous Wild Animals Act, that meant people had to have an expensive licence and had to have all sorts of regulations had to be met for keeping these creatures. A lot of people didn't want to do it anymore, so they simply released them. And we know that because there are even photos of some of these animals stalking the wild with collars around their necks. So we know that these animals have come from captivity.
Can they survive?
Well, apparently so. I mean, nowadays, I noticed 6 different species, not different individuals, totally different species, including a clouded leopard from Southeast Asia, which lives in the humid jungles, was believed to be dead after a few days of having escaped in the British winter. But 8 months later, it was still very much alive and well and killing lambs on a farm until it was shot dead and would have carried on surviving. So things like this, black panther from India, places like that, there's no doubt they can and are surviving.
Do you think at some stage, Karl, we'll come to a stage when we do know what is around the world, we're sure of all the different species?
If we get enough finance to explore the last areas of the world, if we don't have all the rainforests and areas being destroyed in the meantime, we may find the major ones. I don't think we'll ever find all the small ones, but the big ones may eventually turn up. But we need to have a lot more encouragement from the people basically who have the money, who are willing to invest in this type of investigation, and we need to do it fairly quickly before all of the natural environments are being destroyed completely. I mean, we're losing them now, rainforests, acres are going every minute. So it is quite an urgent business.
Right, well, thank you very much indeed. Dr Karl Shuker has been my guest this evening, a cryozoologist.
Crypto.
I've done it again, I'm sorry, I've frozen you up. A cryptozoologist. This is his book. It's called The Lost Ark, New and Rediscovered Animals of the 20th Century. And that's what we've been talking about for the last half hour. Karl, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Coming up after the break, Peter Neville.
Wire TV informs